Welcome to Southpod, the first and foremost podcast created to tell the true story of tech innovation in the American South. Southpod is hosted by John Yerian and Stanfield Gray and produced by Dig South Tech Media. Dig South Tech Media is the South's tech hub, the place where leading global brands connect with the most scalable startups. Visit us at digsouth.com and follow us on social media at Dig South. The following episode features Jill Rowley, growth strategist, startup advisor, and a fund advisor at Stage 2 Capital. Now let's dig into Southpod with Jill Rowley.
Hello and welcome back to Southpod, Rise of a Region. I am your host, Stanfield Gray. Today we have on Southpod Jill Rowley, growth strategist and startup advisor and fund advisor at Stage 2 Capital. Jill and her family moved to Charleston, South Carolina in August 2017 after spending 20 years in the San Francisco Bay Area working with SaaS or software as a service companies. She was an early employee at Salesforce, among the first 100, and Eloqua, number 13. She loves startups, especially category creators. Jill works in tech, but is not technical with nearly 20 years of B2B MarTech experience. She is a highly sought-after expert whose expertise includes B2B, SaaS, go-to-market, marketing, sales, social selling, startups, category creation, growth, ecosystem, networking, you name it, she's done it all, especially in the go-to-market marketing space and the SaaS space, with a myriad of fantastic companies. Today, she's an investor. I'm going to let her tell you a lot more about her investing, her consulting, her work with a lot of fast growth startups. But before I do that, I have to say, let's dive right in. But this is obviously a super critical time for businesses, both large and small, as well as the greater US and global economies. We're in the midst of a pandemic unlike anything we have ever seen before in the US. So how are you, Jill, personally holding up? How's the fund doing in light of this? What are some of the adjustments you've been forced to make during the quarantine that will kind of inform and really set the context for our conversation today?
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm excited to be here, and I'm really excited to be part of the South and the Southeast venture community and startup community and part of the whole ecosystem after spending so many years on the West Coast. So Stage 2 Capital is an early stage venture fund, and we invest in B2B SaaS companies. We invest at a unique stage, and it's really around go-to-market. So we invest where companies have achieved 1 to 3 million at least in annual recurring revenue. So the company's gotten beyond founder-led selling. They've hired their first couple salespeople. They've stood up some type of marketing demand gen engine. They have a customer success individual, and they're starting to build their repeatable revenue engine. We are a small fund. Fund 1, we raised $15 million, and we raised that $15 million from 97 go-to-market operators. Instead of going out and raising our first fund from institutional sources of capital, we raised the fund from people who have been in the roles that our portfolio companies need help around. So they've been sales leaders, they've been marketing leaders, they've been customer success, operations, enablement, operations folks.
So it sounds like the strategy is to have a large group of experts that you can source that can advise all of the companies that you're potentially funding. Is that correct?
100%. You nailed it. It's a large pool of experts who have been experienced operators who also can bring us deal flow, right? They're the kinds of people who are being tapped by startups because they've been there and done it. So they're getting approached by early stage founders for their advice. And so we're actually finding that we get deal flow, we leverage our LPs for due diligence, and then we leverage them for value add to our currently 10 portfolio companies.
So with a large group of 97 LPs and 10 portfolio companies, walk us through a typical day in the life for you. What does it look like in the morning? How do you schedule and manage that? And how are you sort of weaving in and out of the structure?
So, great question. I would categorize my career path in different chunks, right? I'm now 47 years old. I don't pretend like I'm having my 12th or 13th or 14th, 29th birthday. As a woman, I think it's important that we own all of who we are, and age is one of those things. So I'm 47 years old, and I've had a great career. My earlier days of my career were spent getting up at 5 a.m. after maybe not having gone to bed until, midnight or 1 a.m. And, the hustle and the grind of nonstop meetings, calls. I also have 4 children who are now not so young anymore. They're 26, 25, 21, and 15. So the earlier part of my life and my career, it was full of chaos and a lot of just keep going, a lot of travel and client meetings. I've always worked for companies. So the last 18 years I've worked for companies where I worked from home. So having been remote, having to travel to see customers or other executives or employee meetings, a lot of again chaos in the earlier stage of my career. 2.5 years ago, in August of 2017, as you mentioned, we moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and it was intentional. It was to get out of the Bay Area because that environment, that physical environment, for someone who is a workaholic, it just brought out the workaholic in me. Coming to Charleston, South Carolina, it the it's more of an emphasis on quality of life, and I feel human connection. In the Bay Area, I allowed a lot of time for traffic, and in Charleston, when I take my dog for a walk in my neighborhood, I allow extra time for conversations and real neighborly connection. That wasn't the mindset that I had in the Bay Area. It was a hustle and grind, get up and go, and don't stop. Here at this stage of my career, I'm also fortunate that I've been successful financially. And I want to talk about that, Stanfield, because another thing that women don't talk about is money. And we need to talk about money because money equals power and money equals really freedom to make different decisions. And so I don't have a job anymore. Although I'm part of Stage 2 Capital in an LP, a limited partner investor, and also fund advisor role, I don't have a job. My goal is really calendar zero.
Let's pause for a moment and peel back a layer on what you just said about women and the comfort level with money, because I think this is a really important issue. And it's very interesting as a person who grew up in the South. And I know, you went to the University of Virginia. A lot of times we're taught, men and women, that it's tacky to discuss money, or that, you shouldn't ask someone, how much they make or what their company's worth. But in the startup, in the business world, as people are pitching, it's very commonplace. It's often the very first question you get about annual recurring revenue, how successful you are, what the payroll looks like. What's some advice you would give women, and particularly in the South, about strategies for handling those questions, for being comfortable in that conversation?
It's important. And especially if you're a startup founder, let's say in the South, Lauren Culbertson, she's the founder and CEO of Loop VOC, a great, promising early stage B2B SaaS startup here in Charleston, South Carolina. And she's out raising money. She has to be comfortable talking about money. She has to be talking about the number of customers she has, what the annual recurring revenue is, what her growth goals are, how the funding that she's going to secure, what that's going to, what's the runway that's going to give them from a time frame. She's got to be comfortable talking about the data and the revenue impact that she had when she was at Blackbaud in her product marketing and management role there. Look, I'm very much a fan of see it, be it. If you can see it, you can be it. And so for women to understand that they can actually get on the cap table of startups, that's where it all starts, right? That's where, yes, as a sales professional, I made a shit ton of money in commissions. I had $650,000 years. I had $500,000 years. I had $450,000 years from a commissions and OTE perspective. But where I made my millions of dollars was by being on the cap table of Eloqua. Again, I was employee number 13 there, and then being on the cap table at Marketo when we took that company private, and then was acquired by Adobe. Without being on the cap table, I wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in today, where I don't have to actually go to work and get a paycheck anymore. I can now take the money I've made and invest it.
So let's say, I'm a recent graduate, or particularly women out there who has not worked inside a large company like Eloqua or Salesforce. Are there some resources you would recommend? Should they dive into Brad Feld's venture deals? Are there websites they should go to? How do they just become comfortable with that learning curve, and how do they accelerate their knowledge base? What's the best way to do that? Should they dive right into an accelerator somewhere? How can they overcome that fear of saying, hey, I don't even know how to talk about this. I don't have the language.
Yeah, knowledge and network. Those are the two things. So knowledge and network, and you've got to decide, how do you like to learn? But you just mentioned Brad Feld's venture deals. When I was invited to the venture capital party with Stage 2 Capital, I didn't have a lot of knowledge of how venture capital, the inner workings of venture capital actually worked. I had been an angel investor, so I had invested in a number of early stage startups, but more opportunistically, not programmatically, and not at that level of established venture capital fund where you're investing other people's money. Yes, I would say read books like Yes, You Can Do This. This is a book by Claudia. She is part of Techstars. So Techstars is a great national accelerator program. And Claudia wrote this book, and it's her story of starting up and scaling up a business, being a woman. 86% of women become mothers. Those mothers have to go back into the workforce. And we live in a world of work that was designed by and for men. So we have to think about, as women, how are we going to do things differently? I'm just sitting at my desk. Angel, here's another good book, Jason Calacanis. He's got like a big ass personality. He's a little bit sometimes, on the cocky versus confident side of the equation. But dang if I didn't learn a crap ton about angel investing from Jason. And then I went to Medium and started searching venture capital angel investing women, because I really want to learn alongside women who are also bumping up against the white male establishment of angel investing and venture capital. I have to learn from the men because they're the ones who have achieved power through making money. But I also want to learn alongside women, and I want to shine the spotlight on the women who are actually doing well in the investing and venture capital world. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but I would say, go find out what locally you have from a startup community. Is there a workspace that my niece down in Jacksonville, Florida, she wants to get into this software startup world. I said, go search Jacksonville, Florida startups, see if there's an accelerator, stop in, right? Show up and just say, hey, I'm here to learn. How can I help? What can I do? So knowledge and network, there's podcasts, there's videos, there's conferences, there's books, there's all sorts of things that And Twitter is an amazing channel in terms of when I got plugged into venture capital and really started to get, do this as less of a hobby and more as a profession. I started following venture capitalists on Twitter, following who they follow, and then in particular looking for hashtags women in venture capital, women in VC, female founders, female funders, and found all sorts of resources that are available from a learning perspective.
Is there any danger sometimes in over segmentation of not necessarily a market, but literally your network of people? Sometimes I find myself sometimes realizing that I'm only talking to the same people over and over. I'm creating my own bubble and echo chamber. So do you have advice for women and really for any founder in terms of how to keep expanding that circle, how to, punch your way into new rooms, new spaces?
Yes, definitely. That echo chamber, right? Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm hearing the same conversation over and over again. Yes. So I have had a ABC, because I grew up in the sales world. I say I was born sales, bred marketing, bleed customer. And I will take a bullet for a customer. Like I will lay down in the street for a customer. That's just, to me, customers are everything. They are the lifeblood of the business. So, but born sales, the old mantra of ABC always be closing. I
Right.
reframed that. I said, nobody wants to be closed, but what we do want is connection. And so instead of thinking always be closing, think always be connecting. And when you make connections, think about what you can give to the other person, right? I always talk about making deposits first. And so whether that's congratulating them, relating to them, complimenting them on an article that they've been profiled in, looking at their LinkedIn recommendations and actually reading those recommendations and seeing what other people are saying about them and using those words when you send your personalized invite to connect with them. But literally, Stanfield, I don't hear a name without immediately wanting to go to LinkedIn. I want to get the context on who that person is. I go to LinkedIn and then I say, are they on Twitter? Right? Oh, if they're on Twitter, then I can find a little bit more about the tone that person uses, right? Are they only following sports?
Right.
Are they only following, consumer apps or gadgets? And I just start to understand who this person is. And for me, I'm constantly wanting to have a more diverse network, right? I don't want to just be around the echo chamber of people who think and look and act like I do. So it's just this mantra of, we were at a dinner party the other night and I'm wanting to go look up who is this Greer Allen guy. Well, I already knew who Greer
Right,
was,
sure.
right? But I knew who he was, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going back to LinkedIn. I'm at the dinner party looking up Greer Allen just to make sure I don't miss anything about him, CEO, founder of Boomtown.
He stopped me on the street yesterday in his car and we spoke at a social distance.
Good. He's moving into my neighborhood, actually.
I know. Yeah, his brother lives in your neighborhood. He lives behind me at the moment. So yeah, Greer's like a 2-minute walk from my house. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't seen, his brother and his house are literally right across the street from each other. They face each other. So they are like tight knit.
Yeah, well, that's the way they were over here too. That's let's pivot to us for a moment to the 10 companies in your portfolio. So I know that you're geographically agnostic, right? I read
that's
that.
Right.
But at the same time, you have made a new home in the Southeast, and we're in a period of incredible disruption for these companies, for everybody in the economy. What's some stuff you're hearing out there? What's some feedback you're getting from them that we can share with other people who may be in a similar situation or at least might be addressing some of the same challenges during this pandemic?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And we just sent an update to our LPs, the 97 investors in Fund One, detailing what we've been doing to work with each of our 10 portfolio companies to prepare them for the new reality, which the new reality is unknown, right? That's really
That's right. We're making it up as we go. Yeah.
We're making it up as we go. What we do know is we want them to focus our portfolio companies on their core value propositions and thinking through that value proposition through the lens of the unknown of today, right? When we started making our investments back in 2019, we actually late 2018 is when we made our first investment. We actually made these investments through the lens of recession. We've been living in a bull market for a very long time, and the data shows that the recession was likely to happen within a short amount of time. So we made investments with that lens. But we've looked at each of our individual portfolio companies. One of them sells into the healthcare IT community. And it's all about how do you improve the doctor-patient relationship, and how do you create more digital communication capabilities. So highly relevant right now, right? In terms of moving office visits to video, all within the HIPAA regulation and guideline.
Mm-hmm.
So now really thinking through the messaging on Clara, Klara, on Clara's website and their outbound communications, thinking through the messaging through the lens of what we're going through now with COVID-19. Another company, Onboarder, EN Border, it's all about employee onboarding. The product was built mobile first to make that, to understand that millennials and Gen Z, that these folks, it has to be a mobile first experience, and ramping successfully and quickly. Well, now people aren't being onboarded in the office, where their first day at the new company isn't in the office. So instead, thinking through that onboarding process through work from home, and preparing the messaging for Onboarder from a demand gen perspective, but also from a delivery to the customer, helping our Onboarder's customers think through remote employee onboarding. Real estate, we have a real estate tech company in our portfolio. Real estate is getting hit incredibly hard. We actually, my husband and I, we bought 3 properties in downtown Charleston that we're converting into short-term rental properties.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, we are really, we're not done with the renovation and construction, so we're not to the point where we're booking those short-term rentals, but that whole industry has been just, hit
it's been
hard.
flipped upside down at the moment. Right.
Exactly. Our portfolio company list reports, instead of doing open houses, you have to do those virtually. Mm-hmm. So quickly adding capability in the platform to allow for more video and remote open houses in the technology. So we've worked with each of our 10 portfolio companies to think through their value proposition, to think through their messaging, to think through their product portfolio offerings. Are there things that can be done right now to make them more remote work from home, current environment friendly? We've worked with them to readjust their sales plans, to think through how do their sales organizations think more empathetically about the customer and the customer's current situation, and how do they think through being more helpful during this time rather than being more selfful.
Absolutely. I found that, everyone in Dignation, which is the Dig South membership group, has been very understanding, more patient, more willing, to communicate, because we're all in it together. So we're thinking through these issues. I don't know if you've had much time to think about this, but let's talk about the future for a second, the next fund and the next round. When a great disruption occurs, it's very painful, difficult for a lot of people, and a lot of great companies often emerge out of those disruptions. Airbnb and Uber are great examples that, came out of the 2008 banking crisis, financial crisis. Is there anything you're seeing on the horizon? Are there opportunities out there, whether it's in a specific industry or vertical, or something that maybe our viewers should check out or think about, maybe how their company could pivot into that and create a whole new sales experience for customers?
Yeah, good question. And as it relates to stage 2 capital and fund 2, we are actively raising fund 2, which is, this is a really tough time to be raising from go-to-market operators. So we continue to double down on our thesis of getting those folks who have been in those roles, those go-to-market roles, marketing, sales, customer success, as investors, as LPs, into our second fund. I mean, when I look at our portfolio is down. I don't have as much available capital personally to invest in fund 2. I think everybody is looking at, what is my current state? Same thing for startups who are out there raising money. There's this period of time right now where venture capitalists are saying, we're not sure, they're going to have to likely extend the runway of their existing portfolio companies, right? So there's going to have to be follow-on rounds that weren't anticipated, maybe sooner than were anticipated, and they're going to need that capital to continue to fund their existing investments. So they might not have as much capital to make new investments. So that's from the venture side. From the, what are we seeing in terms of fundable companies? I can just tell you, there's a really early stage startup in MarTech that becomes very compelling to me right now, because what they do is they help B2B marketing organizations with planning and budgeting and forecasting. And they also help with then attribution and looking at the return on the marketing investment. Right now, every single CMO is redoing and revising their marketing plans, their marketing budgets, their headcount needs. And they're looking at very precisely the spend and what return they're getting from that. This technology would be hugely valuable for every marketing leader to have today. So because we're redoing these plans and we need to have a very agile way to readjust next week and next month, this is a great technology. Even though the MarTech space is very crowded and there's over 7,000 companies that already exist in MarTech, which is way too many companies, way too much tech for the TAM, the total addressable market, this particular MarTech, early stage MarTech company looks very interesting due to the capability that they provide, the immediate capability that they provide to every single marketer that needs it today. So you think through Zoom. I mean, they're already public company, but when I saw this coming, and I know Zoom really well because one of our LPs she runs sales ops and enablement at Zoom. I remember the first experience I had with Zoom. Because I've used WebEx and GoToMeeting and all of the other legacy products. And the first time I used Zoom, it was like magic. I mean, it just works.
So it works. It's so easy. Sure.
And no crappy downloads, no version control, no updates. And then when I started reading about how Zoom came to be, it was built from the modern infrastructure and built with mobile first capability and very different from the legacy providers. So when I saw this coming, I said to my husband, we need to buy Zoom stock, right? And we bought it 111, so late in the game. I should have been way earlier on Zoom than I was, but let's not worry about that. Let's think about, it was a good investment when we bought it 111. It's going up, and I think it's going to continue to go up. when you see, I think when we get out of this, and we get to the other side of this, we are going to see more remote and virtual as the core, less
Absolutely.
commuting, less traffic, we realize that we can be face to face without having to breathe on each other.
Yeah, we didn't even have to brush our teeth today, right?
But I did brush my teeth.
I did too. I know it crosses your mind. It's just one of those habits that sets up a good interview, right? Well,
It does.
I mean, let's pivot to this for a minute. You moved from San Francisco in part to escape the grind, to recalibrate your quality of life in Charleston.
Yep.
One thing I've noticed during the quarantine is I've never seen this many of my neighbors walk and ride their bikes before outside. Everybody's saying hello, kind of shouting at each other, keeping a good distance, a safe distance, but nevertheless, they're outside. They're being, and we're fortunate to have great weather and be able to do that here. What are some tips maybe you could share with how you refocus, how you unwind, or, how do you separate, the Jill Rowley who needs to be hyper focused on the company, and I'm in a business meeting, but then I've got 4 kids and I need to be able to turn that off and enjoy my life too. Are you meditating? Are you doing yoga? Have you changed your diet? What are some of the things you've done besides just physically relocate yourself to the other side of the country?
Yeah. So I used to look at people when I was in the Bay Area who meditated and did yoga as weird. And
Sure.
why aren't they? I'm a high intensity person. So for me, my workouts, I am so missing Orange Theory right now.
Mm-hmm.
It is such a big part of my daily routine. And what I recognized is, in the morning, my 15-year-old daughter, she's a freshman in high school. She can very easily make her own breakfast. But at this stage of my life, I'm living the back 9 of my life very differently than the front 9. The front 9, I'd be running out the door with her breakfast in hand, carrying it onto the bus to make sure she didn't miss the bus. That's not my life today. Like, I'm up, I have my coffee, and then I get in the kitchen, I make her avocado toast or heat up leftovers. She's a good leftover, person. And then I go to Orange Theory. And right now, not being able to go to Orange Theory, where it's not just about the workout, but it's about, I really need to give people motivation, right? I get my energy from giving other people their energy, and not being able to give other people their energy. This has been really hard. What I have been doing is yoga and meditation via Zoom. I never would have thought that I would be doing on my mat in my solarium with my dog, which I don't know if you can see Toby, but
Oh yeah, I can see him.
Yeah, but with my dog right there, like I wouldn't have done that pre-COVID-19. Now I need that. I need that time to recalibrate, to get all of the stress and the worry. We have 3 kids in California still. I worry every day about them. I worry about their mental well-being. 2 of them are in San Francisco. They are on full lockdown. This is, incredibly difficult time for them. So, I think just outside of what's happening with COVID-19, being more balanced and being more intentional and having more focus, and not having that all be about work and my career and the next stage and the next level of taking it to, but instead taking this time to just be more deliberate and be more intentional. Definitely focused on a much healthier diet, although right now it's a little hard, I promise. I mean,
It is, right.
it's a little hard, But
Yep.
yeah, I've had to make some adjustments. And then my daughter and I go for walks in the neighborhood. The other day, one of our neighbors, she's elderly. She had a dog that she always lets out, and the dog just sort of roams the neighborhood and then gets back to her house somehow. The dog smelled. It had like clumps of like yuckiness on him. We brought him home in the backyard, gave him a bath, and
Cleaned
cut
him
him up, cleaned him up, and then sent Rascal back to his home. But my daughter and I wouldn't have had that experience but for COVID-19, and both of us actually resetting and rethinking of what's important and how we want to help other people.
Well, thank you for sharing that silver lining with us. Jill, we appreciate your time. I know you're obviously super busy person, and we love collaborating with you. We appreciate the support through Dig South Tech Summit and our Dig Nation membership group. Are there any last or parting words you'd like to share with the audience today on SouthPod?
Yeah, I would say, just going back to a concept that we talked about earlier, everyone has something to contribute. Everyone has something that makes them uniquely them. And I would encourage people to focus on what makes them uniquely them and bring that to others. I would really encourage people to be very thoughtful about nailing their niche and doing what they need to do to expand their networks, increase their knowledge, but think about making deposits rather than always asking for withdrawals. Think about how you can be of service and of value. Think about how you can be helpful and handy to other people, because you have something to bring. You have something to offer, regardless of your age or how deep or wide you are into your career path. You have something to contribute, and it's your duty and it's your obligation to make those deposits in our community.
You have something to contribute. I love it. Thank you, Jill Rowley. This is Stanfield Gray with SouthPod. Thank you for joining us today. Till next time.